The Olympics are coming up, and joining me once again is veteran Olympic correspondent Mark Connolly is my guest today.
Reluctantly.
This podcast reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. Get a better rate, term, and service for your 2026 mortgage renewal. Concept Clothing and Culture. ConxEPPT.com. And Wendy Campbell, realtor with BlackmoreRealEstate.ca. Also a realtor partner with Rowett New Home Builders.
Reluctantly.
Hello, Terry.
Hey, Mark. Good to see you. How was your vacation?
Oh, it was great. Get a break from the winter. It's awesome.
Yeah. Mexico?
Mexico, yeah.
What part?
Went to Mexico City, and then San Miguel de Allende, and then a little town north of Puerto Vallarta called Guayabitos. So ended up
Guayabitos,
on the
yeah.
beach.
I know Guayabitos very well. I had an
Oh,
apartment in La Penita de Jaltemba.
oh, nice.
I've spent many, many nights walking home from bars in Guayabitos
Excellent.
and La Penita de Jaltemba. So very familiar with that area. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So back refreshed and set for the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan-Cortina.
Yes.
What is your schedule like? What are you going to be covering? Are you covering
Well,
from Canada or are you covering from actual Italy?
well, since my retirement from CBC, I'm basically freelancing now and doing things like this. I won't be going to the games. I won't be going to Toronto. Like the last two Olympics that I covered for CBC, we covered them from Toronto. And that's where most of the broadcasters were. And that's where a lot of the people will be. I talked to Helen Upperton, who was my color commentator for bobsleigh and skeleton for two Olympics. And she is covering it once again for CBC, and they're going to be in Toronto. They were supposed to be, yeah, they were going to be in Toronto covering it. Although she did go to Italy for a little preview just to get a feel for the track. But unlike my first 10 Olympics, which were on site, uh, you know, all over the world, now most of this stuff is done from Toronto. So it's kind of a bummer for the people who cover it now because I mean it's not as great to be on the course and traveling through the city and interacting with athletes and people who are at the games. It's not quite the same.
How much of the stuff online that we have seen from an unprepared sort of standpoint is true with Milan-Cortina? Like, are you pretty much in the know of what actually, like, I don't know what's AI generated
Yeah,
images, like the big screen TV,
right.
so-called in the Milan arena for the men's hockey and women's hockey. I don't know what is true and what's not true anymore on the internet.
I know it's hard. It's hard to know because every time something like this happens, which is very controversial, obviously, a lot of the trolls jump on it and try to blow it up and blow it out of proportion. I think there are a lot of hockey people who are worried, though. The arena, it looks like, is going to be ready the day before the first game is played. That's not a that's tight. That is tight, and I think there are some worries about it, but, they've committed to play in that arena, so I think they're gonna go forward with it, and I think the International Olympic Committee, I think, has jumped in, from what I hear, to say to the Italians, "Okay, we are here to make sure this happens," because they didn't wanna I mean, it would be a huge black eye if somehow the hockey games were delayed because that arena wasn't ready to go. And as far as I know, the arena is the only thing that is holding things up. Everything else is ready to go. Many of the other facilities were already there and in use. I know, I covered bobsleigh, skeleton, and luge for many, many years, and that track is ready to go and in good shape. And they used it for a test event in December, so everything is fine there. So I think the hockey is the big issue.
I think it would be a shame if they ended up having to play the games in the equivalent of the Mullet Arena. Remember what happened with with the Arizona Coyotes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they might have to move it actually quite far away if it was the case that that arena couldn't go. And there's only a couple of different options. And I have friends actually from Calgary, somebody I went to high school with, who is heading there, and he's got tickets to some of the big games, including the gold medal game, hoping Canada makes it there. But people have spent thousands of dollars to go to the Olympics and thousands of dollars on those Olympic tickets. And if they're not able to use them, that would be a huge disaster, obviously.
Have you been in the Milan-Cortina region? Do you know the layout of all of the stuff and where everything is gonna be, the distance that the athletes are gonna have to travel, whether it be alpine skiing or hockey or whatever from, say, the Olympic Village up to where the events are gonna happen?
I've only been there as a tourist, so I haven't looked at the exact, places they would have to go. Most of the athletes would stay in close proximity to their venue, and that's the way it's been for most Olympics. When I did the Olympics in Italy in 2006, and the sliding sports were actually about an hour outside of Milan, right? And so we everybody was staying in this little village where the sliding sports were. They weren't down in Milan. They were in the village. So you have different spots where people can stay, and they secure that well ahead of the games. And the best funded teams, like the Americans, the Canadians, things like that, they would book their own accommodations and get something that works for them. So they might have their sliding team, for instance, in a huge house or a set of apartments that are close to the venue because they don't want to leave anything to chance. And I think that's the case in Italy. There are some venues that are, say 100 miles away from the actual village, and so they're not going to be staying at the village. They're going to be at a place that's in close proximity, and that's the way most Olympics work. Even in the summer games, when you have sailing events, that might not be right next to the main stadium. That might be, as I said, 100 kilometers away. So there'll be another sort of center where everybody is gathered for that sort of thing.
I think we've all seen some of the video of where the hockey players end up getting dressed and then they all jump on a bus with their gear on. It's kinda like when they were in Pee Wee,
Yeah,
driving carpool to a game in Andrew from Edmonton, and everybody's wearing their gear already, and
yeah. Or my dad picking up like 7 Bantam players in his Oldsmobile Delta 88. I remember that when I was a kid, and everybody would, you'd show up, you'd pick up a kid, and he's basically got all his equipment on and just brings his skates in, and off we go to Forest Heights Arena.
uh
I don't know if it'll be quite that bad in Italy, but I think there'll be a lot of stories about that for sure when people first get there and they get their first look at how it's gonna work.
So Milan, obviously, it's like a headquarters for fashion and
Yeah.
food and all kinds of stuff. What is Cortina? Is it a small village? Is it a
Yeah.
mountain village? Like, is that up toward Innsbruck, Austria, in
It's
the
not
Alps?
quite that far, but, it is, yeah, it's in the north of Italy. It is a small village. The way these places work in Europe for the most part is it's village after village after village. So where we were, say, in, 2006, we were in Cesana, which you never really heard about Cesana. It's not, no one would talk about Cesana at the Olympics, but Cortina is the main area in the mountains where the Olympics will take place. So there's a lot of different venues that are close by, the skiing and that sort of thing, and the bobsleigh is very close to there, the track. So they're all within, say, very close commuting distance, and that's why they call it, Milan-Cortina because you're not going to be in Milan if your event is in Cortina. But these are small villages that are used to having a lot of tourists, so they have a lot of accommodations and a lot of facilities that they can use for the various events. So they're well set up, and because they've hosted a lot of different events on their own, for instance, ski events, World Cup events, Cup bobsleigh, that sort of thing, cross country. Uh, I think they'll do very well in Cortina. Milan might be a little bit different. I'm not sure how well that's going to work, to be honest.
With you being freelance now that you've officially retired as janitor at CBC, um, what is it that you might hope for as far as maybe somebody taking advantage of your expertise and your knowledge, your abilities to host something? Like CBC's got the Olympics, and I
Yeah.
know as a broadcaster for a competing or a rival or a different company, we can't say the Olympics or the games or whatever. That's all
I know there's all
because
kinds of rules.
yeah,
Yeah.
the rights holders. It's the same as the Super Bowl. We're not supposed to talk about Super Bowl. We can say the big game, or I don't know how we can
Well,
be
I think
referred
the way
to
the
it.
rules break down is you can't, say, promote your coverage using the official logos, like, or the official names and that kind of thing. And when we're talking about it, we can talk about the Olympics. So the Olympics are a thing that's going on, and as we're talking on your podcast about that, you can do that. You just can't promote it to say, "Oh, this is our Olympic special," or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I've looked at the various rules, and it's pretty complicated. But as you know, in journalism, there's a thing called fair use, which is when there's something in the news, you can talk about it.
Mhm.
But the Olympics are very litigious. They will sue people with Olympic in their name. And even I know there's some Greek restaurants that have been sued over the years about using Olympic, even though it's something that in Greece is very ubiquitous. Everywhere you go, there's Olympic this and Olympic that because that's where the origin of the games were, obviously. So I'll be doing is a lot of this sort of thing. People ask me to come on podcasts and on their radio or their web games to talk about various things. And of course, people talk to me a lot about the sliding sports. I got a lot of calls a couple weeks ago when the whole controversy happened with the Canadian um, skeleton team and what happened with Katie Ulander, the American slider who didn't make it to the Olympics. Everybody wanted to hear about for me on that and weigh in because I've seen this before. I've seen all kinds of things happen with athletes going to the games, and I have some expertise in that area specifically. Now, over the years, I've covered all kinds of other sports in the Winter Games as well. I covered ski jumping one year in Salt Lake City. I've done interviews for cross country skiing at the end of events, and also the other aerial skiing and that sort of thing. So when you're with CBC and you're at the Olympic Games, when you're actually at the events, you get thrown into all kinds of different situations where you have to be a quick study on that particular sport, even if you're not an expert on it.
What was the controversy with the skeleton and Team Canada and the U.S. slider and all that? What just for somebody who's unaware?
So what happens is that when athletes want to qualify for the Winter Olympics, there's usually a 2-year period where they have to gain enough points to qualify as an athlete, as an international athlete. And then their country has to qualify certain spots. So in other words, Canada, say, does really well in skeleton over the 2-year period. They might have top 10s, top 8s. It depends what it might be. And then their athletes have to be in the top, say, 50 in the world to qualify for the Olympics. And then Canada gains 2 spots by having a lot of athletes qualify over that time. So then they can nominate their 2 athletes who are qualified to go to the games. Same with the U.S. The U.S. had qualified 2 athletes, and you could possibly get 3. Germany, for instance, would have 3 athletes because they've had so many points. So the Americans and then other athletes can come in and try to gain points in the late going. So Katie Ulander she's a 5-time Olympian. She has never won a medal at the games, but she is a world champion. She won the World Cup 2 years in a row, and this was back over 10 years ago. And she wanted to qualify to get to these games to go to her 6th Olympic Games, which would have been quite a competition, obviously an achievement. Now, she was not on the World Cup circuit. There is a secondary circuit, like the minor leagues, the North American or the Europe circuit. And these are where young athletes go to train and to compete so they can make it onto the World Cup. But those races also get you points that can help you qualify for the Olympics. So in January, she went to compete at one of the final times in Lake Placid. And if she would win, now she is by far the best person in this race because she's got so much experience and she's going against very young sliders. So the chances are she is going to win that race, which she did. Now, what happens is if you win the race and it's a full field, you would get 120 points. If it's a lesser field, in other words, if they have less athletes and don't quite qualify, I can't remember I think it's 20 or above, you get 120 points. If it's 19 and below, you can only get 90 points. At the last minute, the Canadian team withdrew 4 of their athletes. So it reduced the number of athletes in the field and it reduced the number of points available. So Katie Ulander won the race, but she didn't get 120 points. She only got 90, and that didn't give her enough points to qualify for the Olympics. And so she
Mm.
cried foul and said, "Hey, the Canadians did this on purpose so that I wouldn't qualify." What the Canadians did is if she would have qualified, it might have bumped one of their athletes out of the Olympics. And so they decided, why would we help an American qualify for the Olympics when it would cost one of our athletes? So there's the controversy because, Katie Ulander says this is not in the spirit of the games. They did this on purpose. And the Canadians said, we just did what was right for our athletes. And we really pulled many of them out because they were young athletes who competed already 3 times that week. We didn't think it would be good for them. I don't know if I quite believe that. I think they did it because they didn't want to get one of their athletes disqualified. So this is a continuing controversy, and the Canadian coach basically said, "Hey, I'm doing what's best for my team."
It's an Olympic tariff that Canada has placed on the United States.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, with everything that's going on between Canada and the U.S. as in politics and that sort of thing, it makes for interesting discussion for sure.
Let me tell you about my mortgage broker for a moment. Mike at ThompsonMortgages.com has been client focused for over 17 years. They take care of all the financial components of your real estate purchase so that you can concentrate on finding the perfect home. Whether you're a first time buyer or renewing like so many other people in 2026, let ThompsonMortgages.com work for you. They find the lender, and it costs you nothing for their services. The lender pays. Download the app and get pre-approved in 60 seconds. ThompsonMortgages.com, 780-413-6743. Tell them you heard about them on the Reluctantly podcast.
Reluctantly.
Hey, give me a minute to tell you about Concept Clothing and Culture. CONXEPPT.com. Suits and tuxedos. And you can find them right here in Edmonton. They're handmade suits, custom tuxedos, tailored essentials, suits starting at $1,188. You choose everything. The color, the fabric, even the stuff on the inside. You know, the little pokey pocket thing that sticks out. It's amazing. It's a terrific experience. You can go through and get something as fancy as a tuxedo, or you can start with outerwear, matching sets, tailored essentials. They even do shirts, trousers, vests, and they do amazing couture for women. CONXEPPT.com. Concept, Clothing and Culture. Look your best.
Reluctantly.
Are these Olympics even on people's radar? Here in Canada, we've been concerned about the Canadian men's hockey team for 2 years.
Right.
You can't turn on the television onto the sports show without hearing something about it. Who should be there? Who shouldn't? With everything else, I know it's every 4 years people get, oh, rah rah Canada, but
Yep.
are these Olympics on people's radar at all?
I think they are. I think that you're right about the hockey. Obviously, that's the big thing for Canadians. And really, this is Connor McDavid's first chance to play in the Olympics. It's incredible. All through his career, there's been all the games that NHL players have not gone to. And of course, he was injured for one Olympics, so he couldn't go. So it's exciting to watch a player like McDavid compete for Canada. And everybody wants to know if the Canadian team win the gold medal. I mean, nobody really gets excited about, say, bobsleigh, luge, downhill skiing, or the moguls or anything like that, unless they're real hardcore into that sport until the Olympics come. Now, there are. It'll be interesting because this might be. I think CBC has 2 Olympics left, 2026 and 2028, under the current contract, and we get to watch CBC for free, and it's all over online and that sort of thing. And past 2028, it'll be interesting to see if places like, Prime Video or YouTube bid on the Olympics, and then, the over the air broadcaster like CBC might be cut out because they can't afford it anymore. So this is a real test to see whether Canadians and others, of course, around the world are still tuning in to the Olympics and seeing all the sports they want to see. Because let's face it, you go on the CBC website, you can watch almost any sport you want live, right? I mean, and they've got a really good system for that. I think people will be interested, but I mean, the numbers have proven, like at the last Olympics in Paris, the numbers were excellent for CBC. The Winter Games are a little less so, usually. They're not as popular as the Summer Games, but I think it will be. I think once the games get here, people will get very excited. But it's interesting to see if it happens outside of, say, just the rabid sports fan. And being on the radio in Edmonton, I think you'll get feedback from people, and you'll find out a little bit about if those folks who listen to your show every day, are they into the Olympics? It'll be interesting to hear.
Do you think that, talking about contracts for coverage and the possibilities of streaming services taking it over in the future or something, Is it a moneymaker? Like, or is it kind of an albatross around your neck if you get saddled with covering and being the host network for the Olympics?
Well, this is how it works. The IOC creates for every Olympics the Olympic broadcast network, and what they do is they will be at the venues and be at the games. So, say in Milan and Cortina, they'll contract out to different production companies, one to do hockey, and it might be a Canadian, and usually it is a Canadian group doing hockey. So it could be the CBC, for instance, actually producing the hockey, and they'll get paid by the Olympic broadcaster. Then everybody in the world takes that feed, and if they're really interested in hockey, they might augment it with their own broadcasters and with an isolated camera that they could use. Got to pay for all that, and that's what happens. And then, but the rest of the world, if they're just taking the stream of the hockey, they might take the play-by-play, or they'll supply their own play-by-play in their own language, and that's how it works. Now, when the broadcasters like the CBC then pay to get the games. They paid a fee to the IOC. They also have to pay for all the things they use. Like they've got to have a little broadcast office there. They've got to have broadcast positions at the various places, and those become very expensive. And that's why you see, say, 80% of the people who are covering the games for CBC are now in Toronto because that's cheaper. They've got their own studio. They don't have to pay anybody for that, and they can bring it back on fiber, and it it looks great. It's no problem. The expense there is a big part of it. The actual producing of the games, and then the what you pay to the IOC. CBC has to make money on the games. CBC can't afford not to make money on the games. And that's where this next bidding process will find out, okay, this is how much we can bid and know we can make money, whatever that number is. When a streamer comes along like Prime Video or YouTube, they might be able to outbid the CBC and say, "Okay, we can do this in Canada for X amount, and we don't need to have all of these play-by-play guys. We can take the ones that the IOC is providing us, but for certain sports, we'll produce it for certain, as Prime does hockey on Monday nights." And they can make that decision. I have a feeling that's the way it's gonna go because they have so much money they're able to spend on it, and they can use it as a loss leader because even if they don't make money on the games, in the bigger picture of a corporation, of a company that's doing other things, they can promote other things through the Olympics, and that's what all the American networks have done over the years. The Americans pay the most of any company around the world to broadcast the Olympics, and then they use it to promote all their other things. But the way things are going with television and broadcast now, all of that is blown up because it's not as it was once was. So it's really hard to predict which way it's going to go. But I think most people are thinking that it's going to be streaming services covering these games in the future. And what that'll mean for the coverage as far as quality or the ability to see everything at the games, I don't know. It's really hard to predict.
Well, the other thing too is there's an 8-hour difference between Milan and Edmonton. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, so 6 hours to Milan to Toronto. So there's going to be opportunities if there's things happening earlier in the day in Milan or in whatever the venue is
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Italy, it might be stuff that ends up being streamed anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And if you wanna watch it live, you're always watching a stream, and CBC does those streams, right? So if something's happening at 10 in the morning and it's 4 AM in Toronto or 2 AM in Edmonton, you're not gonna get a lot of people who are gonna be up that early to watch it, but they might watch it later in the morning, not live. But that's the value of sports, and I think is the live broadcast, right? Because you can't predict what is gonna happen. And nobody, I mean, I guess you can pause a live broadcast. People can do it. They have the technology. But for the most part, that's why the Super Bowl and the World Cup are so valuable because it's a live thing happening right now that you're part of. And the Olympics are that too. You want to be part of it. Everybody's into it. Everybody's watching. You're going to be on your phone, texting your friends. Are you watching right now? Are you watching this game? Do you see that goal? Do you see McDavid? That sort of thing. I think with everybody being part of it is why these properties are so valuable, so to speak.
For everybody watching on YouTube, obviously you can't see it if you're watching on the audio, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind Mark, he's got the posters of Nagano, Athens, Beijing, and I don't know if that's your office or if it's
It
your
is my
bedroom.
office.
It would be weird if it was your bedroom. Mind you, maybe you have a bedroom Olympics board game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yours and Allison's business is not mine.
Yeah.
But um, I think when we did our previous podcast, when you retired, I believe you were able to rattle off the cities for which the hosts were just like that of all of the stuff that you've covered, the
Yeah.
12 Olympics that you've covered.
Oh, yeah, I could do that right now. Uh,
Sure.
96 was Atlanta, 98 was Nagano, 2000 was Sydney, 2002 Salt Lake City, 2004 was Athens, Greek, 2006 was Milan. No, not Milan, sorry, this year's Milan. What was Italy once again, which was what was 2006? It was Italy. Anyway, 2008 Beijing. We skipped 2 because CTV did both Vancouver and London. Came back in 2014 in Sochi in Russia, 2016 in Rio in Brazil, and 2018 in South Korea. Now that was the last one where I was on location. Then we had 2020 was going to be in Tokyo. It's delayed a year because of COVID. So 2021, I covered Tokyo from Toronto, and that was rather interesting. And then my last Olympics was Paris, and once again covering that from Toronto.
Okay, so Tokyo and Paris, obviously not being there, but
No,
I think you said that you had been in both of these
I
cities
had.
prior
Yep.
as a tourist, perhaps.
Yep.
From all of the places that you were on location at the host city, which city was best prepared as host city of the games?
I think it was Sydney. Sydney, Australia. The Australians are sports fanatics. The Olympic stars in Australia are huge stars. Like I'm talking about swimmers and track athletes and that sort of thing. These people are, if they're a gold medalist in Australia, they're huge stars. They're like McDavid or LeBron James or basketball players in the U.S. or NFL players. That's the Australians are really into the Olympics because their biggest sport probably is Australian rugby on television, but everything else is probably Olympic related. And so Sydney was prepared way ahead of the games. They had fantastic facilities. The volunteers were great. I mean, Sydney's a great city. So I'd say they were the best prepared. There was other, I mean, it was interesting in Beijing. They seemed well prepared as well, but they aren't quite as in 2008, China was kind of a very different place. It was just emerging, right, where people would travel there, and it would be easier. And they've since gone, I think, backwards a little bit. Athens was a cool place, but they were very unprepared in many ways. And I think it's just the way their society is. And also, Italy, when I was there in 2006, it was the volunteers were like very unreliable. It was really hard to get anything done or do anything. Sochi was a bit of a mess for Russia. They had some things and venues that looked really good, and others that were sort of seemed to be slapped together. It was a really interesting place at the time. It seemed like Russia was emerging, and maybe would, but they just remember they just had invaded Ukraine as well back then, Crimea. So there was a lot of tension. So every Olympics had an interesting sort of way to look at it, and it was an interesting place to visit and experience. I can't say I had a bad Olympics anytime, but I say Sydney was the one that was the best prepared and executed it the best as well.
I was you ran through some of the, quasi disaster cities as well. I was
Yeah.
going to ask you which one was the least ready to host the games. Sochi is like a resort city down in Russia, is it not?
It is. It's kind of it's kind of a funny combination of a place where Russians go. It's on the Black Sea, so they go there for vacation. But it's not exact. It's not like a beautiful, say, North American town, resort town. It's a bit of an industrial city, and not quite up to say our standards. And there were where I was up in the mountains, was where the skiing and the bobsleigh were. Was called a place called Rosa Couture, and it was beautiful, like in the mountains. Apparently, they had more trams and lifts than anywhere in the world at the time, and they've since taken some of them down from the mountains and sold them elsewhere to other ski resorts because you wouldn't get a lot of Russians going up there to these various places. And they had part of the town was sort of fenced off; you couldn't go into it. And I understand it was a bit of a mess. and you wouldn't want to go there. And they didn't want you to see that. They only wanted to show you these brand new places that they built that would look good. But yeah, Sochi was a bit of a mess. It was hard to get around, and it was hard to figure out where you were going and how things were working.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by Wendy Campbell, realtor at blackmorerealestate.ca, serving the greater Edmonton area, proudly Canadian and locally owned. Contact Wendy at blackmorerealestate.ca. That's WENDE at blackmorerealestate.ca. Why does she not have a Y in her name? I don't know why. It's none of my business, probably none of yours too. Wendy has over 20 years of home sales experience. She has extensive knowledge of the new and previously owned home market. She can help you out with a free market evaluation of your home. And if you're looking to buy your forever home, she's got all the resources to help you with that as well. Not to mention, she's a builder partner with Rowett Homes. Wendy at blackmorerealestate.ca. WENDE at blackmorerealestate.ca.
Reluctantly.
Do you, as a broadcaster, as someone who's had experience with all these different host cities over the years, do you think for either Summer or Winter Olympics, there should be a single host city that is the pinnacle of venues, of facilities, of everything? Should there just be one host city for Summer Olympics and one host city for Winter Olympics, and they just return there every 4 years? Or do you like the idea? Because being a host city for the Olympics is often a financial disaster, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't think, I don't know if any city, unless they've hosted it before or they have a lot of facilities already for their own use, they don't really come out ahead. And that's where, say, a place like Sydney would have done well because they could use their stadium, say, for soccer or for Australian rules rugby and that sort of thing, and they would use it. I understand that the stadium in Beijing, for instance, was never hardly ever used again and is in disrepair and unusable right now. I don't know if I would say one city for each. I would say maybe you say 4 places around the world where you could hold a Summer Olympics, and then maybe if you could get that number again for the winter, maybe. Uh, because I mean, the IOC doesn't seem to care. I mean, they're all about the money. They're all about earning money from these places. But it's a bad deal for a lot of Olympic cities, as you said. They come out on the short end of the stick. The taxpayers end up holding the bag, right? And even Calgary was looking at bidding at games, and they basically costed it out. And Calgary has a lot of facilities for sure, and a lot of great places you could do the Winter Olympics and for various venues and that sort of thing. But even they looked at it and said, "No, this is not worth it. Like we can't. This is going to be way too expensive because the IOC doesn't care where you get the money. You just got to pay them." And I would agree that I think shortening down the list of where it's hosted and having the IOC put money into that instead of just insisting that these countries, these cities have to put the money up and the governments have to pay the bills would work better. And I think that's the way it's going to go because I don't I you're not getting as many places who are bidding on these cities anymore or on the games, and the IOC is going to have to face that sooner or later.
Here in Canada, we are a hockey country and a winter sport country generally, but if you focus right in on it, it's a hockey country. What do you see from your analysis so far after all of the men's hockey teams have been announced because the NHL is back in the fray?
Yeah.
But let's start off with the women. Is it going to be Canada, U.S. again, like it generally always is?
Absolutely. Those two teams are, Canada, US, they used to be head and shoulders above all the other teams. I'd say that they are now heads above the other teams. They shouldn't have problems with teams like Finland and Sweden, who are also very competitive, but not at the level of the Canadians and the Americans. I think the Americans have the advantage going in. They're certainly probably the gold medal favorite, but I don't think any other country is going to challenge for a gold medal. Um, but there's always chance for an upset, right? These are, especially when you get to the playoffs, these are one-off games, and if you have some bad goaltending or you play poorly defensively, or you can't seem to score, you run into a hot goaltender. I mean, Canada has lost some games at the Olympics they probably shouldn't have lost on the men's side. On the women's side, it hasn't happened. The Canadians and the Americans always seem to get there and get past these other teams. But as these other teams get better and closer, there is the chance for an upset. So on the women's side, I don't think there's any issue at all that it'll be Canada and the U.S.
And
On
with
the-
the with the women's event for hockey, uh, every once in a while, like I'll turn on the Olympics and see that Uzbekistan is playing Japan, and I think,
yeah,
what? Do they even have a hockey arena in Japan? Kind of thing.
yeah.
It's just the most unlikely of sources for a hockey team, I think.
You know what? Japan actually has done well at the B championships. They brought a lot of Canadians over there to help train them. You know Perry Pern, who was the longtime coach at Nate for many years, and then he went on
Yes.
to NHL positions. He's been working with the Japanese men's national team, and he goes back and forth over the years. I'm not sure if he's still with them or if he's still working in Asia, but they get a lot of Canadians over there, and they just don't have enough people playing hockey for it to be really competitive, but they have solid programs. It's just they don't have enough really good players to compete.
The men's side, the announcement of the teams, the rosters, the U.S. and Canadian teams, obviously of high importance for hockey fans here in
Yep.
Canada and North America. But I mean, there's lots of other players who will end up playing for their respective countries. You look at guys like Draisaitl
Right.
and Stützle for Germany, and I don't. It seems like Ekholm got a snub from Sweden.
Yeah.
Bouchard got the snub from uh, 18. Zach Hyman
Zach Hyman. Yeah.
got the snub from Team Canada. Bill Guerin was he putting together the U.S. team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Guerin. Yeah. I just saw Bill Guerin the other day. He was in Edmonton when the Oilers were playing Minnesota. I think that I think the Americans are probably going in maybe as 1A, Canada 1B. It's hard to know. I mean, the Four Nations, obviously Canada won that, and it was very, very close. And in some ways, we're a little bit lucky, I thought. But I think it'll come down to those two teams. But I'm kind of disappointed, as you mentioned a few players there that didn't make the team, and I think they named a couple of people on that team who are not having great seasons. They named them fairly early, and guys are not playing well, like Drew Doughty. I mean, I'm all for experience, that sort of thing, but I don't see how Evan Bouchard couldn't fill that role way better, and he is playing fantastic as they go into the Olympics. I think Zach Hyman playing with Connor McDavid would have been a lock. He would have played great. He just got off to a bit of a slow start. If he had a quicker start, I think he would be there. I'm a
He was
little
injured.
worried.
He didn't play the first 20
Exactly, because he was
minutes.
injured. Right, you're right. Yeah, so it wasn't really the slow start. It was the fact that they couldn't see how well he was gonna be.
Yeah.
I'm kinda disappointed with some of those choices, and I'm a little worried. And, you hope that, well, even though I'm not that confident in some of these players that they picked, you still want them to play well. The fact is that Canada, and to some degree, the U.S. could send 2 teams each on the men's side and be very competitive. And it would hard to, how hockey teams come together despite the fact that they don't always have the best players. And when I say the best players, it's not always about an all-star team, right? It's about players fulfilling certain roles on the team as opposed to, yeah, this guy might be the best offensive defenseman, but he's a defensive liability. And that's, of course, what people would say about Bouchard often. But I think that the numbers kind of belie that. He has actually played extremely well this year.
What events are in the Winter Olympics that you think that's still an Olympic event? Like, why? Just your opinion.
Well, there's one actually that is joining the Winter Olympics this year. There's this kind of strange. It's called ski mountaineering, and it's where you have to climb up the hill and then ski. Have you heard about this?
No, I
Yeah,
have.
this is a brand new thing, and it's kind of like hiking up the hill and then skiing down and then hiking some more and skiing down. I mean, it's a very athletic event. It's very difficult, and I don't know if it's an official. Well, it has to be an official Olympic sport to get in the Olympics. I don't know if it's permanent or if they try these one-offs. But I thought that was kind of strange. For the Winter Games, not so much. Like, there's lots on the in the summer games that you think, like, pentathlon or some of these ones that, like, that are only allowed only elite people can do because it costs so much money. In the winter games, it's not so much. I think, I think a lot of those sports are, because there's less sports too, uh, I don't think there's anything in the Olympics that I would say, oh, and I covered sliding sports, so a lot of people nobody's on the luge, right? No amateur lugers in Canada are going down on the luge. These are it's a quite a specific sport, and skeleton is kind of the same, and you have to have a track, a multi-million-dollar track to do the sport as opposed to just going out on a ski hill. So those sports are kind of, I mean, I covered them and I know a lot about them, so I'm always excited about them because I can see where the athletes can excel. But I know a lot of people who are just average viewers will go, What is this? He's on his belly. Now this guy's on his back. How is this different?" So
Well, yeah, I was going to say skeleton is on the belly head first, and
that's right.
luge is on your back feet first, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you
And
can have two-man luge, which I always wondered, how did that sport start?
well, actually, it's doubles luge because it doesn't have to be 2 men. It could be a man and a woman.
Oh, you can have mixed sex, like mixed
Yep.
in each of the events, so it's not
You never
women's
do.
and
You never do because there's no real advantage for that. But theoretically, you could.
hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess, what do you flip a coin to see who's on the bottom and who's on the top? I've always wondered that.
Well, usually the way it works, if you see a doubles team, the guy in the bottom is the biggest guy, and the guy on the top is a smaller guy, and they have 2 different roles, when they steer in the sled. It's quite complicated back and forth the way they steer it, and they have to do it in unison, but I know it does look kinda strange.
Mhm. With, and then bobsleigh, there's, there's two-man,
Yep.
four-man, and then team, like, up to 8?
No, no, you can only have 4 men in a bobsleigh or 4 they don't have 4 women.
Okay.
Yet. But they also have now monobob, where the women, will go down in a two-man sled or two-person sled by themselves, and that's another medal event.
Hmm.
And, so just whenever they're trying to add new events or expand the games, they wanna add it so they don't have to add more athletes or build new structure. So if they can add events within a sport, they'll do that, and that's why you have 2 women bobsleigh and monobob, and on the men's side, you have two-man bobsleigh and four-man.
Well, and I guess, you hope that monobob doesn't start spreading through the Olympic Village because everybody
It would be very dangerous, yeah, I don't know if there's a vaccine for it or not.
what, what events knowing that you primarily covered the sliding events
Yeah.
in winter, standing back and looking at, broadly all of the, events, just based on your knowledge of, maybe everything that's happening, is there something that Canada might sneak in where we didn't expect?
Where we didn't expect I think that Canada does extremely well in all of skiing sports, right? Like, we have a chance in almost everything. We're very, very good at, a lot of the, snowboard events and there's various ways that those events come about, right? There's different, uh I mean, some are straight races, some are, going through the gates and that sort of thing. There's just so many permutations of that. That's where Canada is gonna probably pick up a lot of, medals. We've always been a very strong speed skating, nation. It'll be interesting to see who the stars of speed skating become. I think the short track is one of the most exciting events at the games, and it's fun to watch on TV as well. Fun to be in the arena for those, and, one of the great things about covering the Olympics when I would be on location is you have basically an Olympic pass, right? And it gets you into every venue. So on a usually when I would cover the bobsleigh, for instance, it would happen in the morning, and then in the evening, I would be free to go watch other events. So if you're nearby a venue, you would go and they would let you in and go see. So I saw some aerial events when I was in Italy the first time, and then when I was in Athens, I got to go see at the big stadium the 100-meter final. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that when you're there.
What sport do you find yourself, uh, feeling way overqualified, and then you've just been in the most obscure situation and been able to share that expertise? Like, have you ever been sitting in a bar somewhere and all of a sudden you overhear a conversation and you say, well, you pull a Cliff Clavin moment, say, as a matter of fact.
Actually, I have. That's an interesting question because, I've heard people talk about bobsleigh in bars often, and I would sort of weigh in. But one guy, I was at actually, in Vancouver. I was at the Olympics in Vancouver just as a spectator because CTV was covering it. I went and visited friends, and the bobsleigh was on, and we were watching it, and they were doing really well. And some people next to me were talking about it, and they just said, I can't remember the remark they made, but it was something like, "Well, they just hop in, they go down, and I mean, big deal. Like, why would one be faster than the other?" And so I turned and I said, well, actually, the guy in the front is steering the sled, right? Like that's what's happening. And the guys in the back are the ones that propel it. And they said, well, why would, how different aren't they all the same? And I said, no, no. I said, these guys, the three guys in the back, their job is in the first 5 seconds. So I was able to explain this to them, and they really appreciated it. And I enjoyed it because, it was something obviously I'd covered for 20 years. And I was, I was interested in telling people, okay, this is how it works. And hopefully when you're listening to the Olympics, that's what the commentators are doing there, because, you know, might be 75% of the audience, you're actually introducing them to that sport. They may have never watched it before. If they watched the previous Olympics, they forget about it. So that's happened a couple times in a bar where I've gone, well, actually, this is how bobsleigh works.
Then after everybody listens to you talk for 4 or 5 minutes, and then after you're done, they turn back to themselves, "Oh, if I get a load of this guy."
Who is this dude? Yeah, Mr. Bobsleigh over here. Nice.
With, all of your, 12 Olympics, what's the most controversial event, person, the thing wherever like, what's your Ben Johnson moment that you were,
Ooh.
there for?
Let me think about that. I mean, there's been a couple of events where crashes have happened or things have happened that have been really serious, and trying to think if there's been that hasn't been really scandals per se, but one of the things that happened that was kind of gut wrenching to cover was in Sochi. Helen Upperton and I were covering the bobsleigh, and her husband is Jesse Lumsden, and Jesse, of course, former NFL, CFL player, and I think 2 or 3-time Olympian. Now he's the head of the bobsleigh, he's the head guy for the bobsleigh, the high performance director. But he's competing in Sochi, and they're in the 4-man, and the team is doing extremely well. So Helen and I are calling the race. She's got, her husband's in the sled, and they crash, and it would look like a serious crash. And the bobsleigh turns over, guys come flying out the back. You don't know what's happening, and Helen, you know, all of a sudden, and I just put my hand on her arm, and then she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, "Let's just wait." Basically, we didn't say anything. We were quiet, and then I went forward talking. Okay, they've crashed. Someone's come out the back. He's standing up. It looks like, and then we're just going to wait until we know what's happening here, and just trying to get, because obviously she is freaking out inside.
Mhm.
She's a great broadcaster, though. She held it together, and then they got up. We could see they were okay. And I said, "Helen, that must have been a gut-wrenching 30 seconds for you when that sled went over with your husband in it." And then we were able to chat about that and how that went, but that was, oof, that was scary.
I always get a kick out of chatting with you. So great to
Oh,
catch up.
thanks, Terry.
Yeah.
We go
Uh,
back a long way.
yes, we do. As a matter of fact, as we record this week, we're looking at my 40th anniversary of being in Edmonton.
That's awesome.
Since I first turned on a microphone at the old K97 back February 4th, 1986. So
Well, congratulations. That's so
thanks.
awesome for you.
Yeah. I'm I'm trying to find my binoculars so I can chase your tail on that whole retirement thing, but I don't see it just yet. So
Oh, well, if you still love what you're doing, keep
yeah.
doing it.
And then you don't work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
MarkConnolly.ca is the website, hosting, toasting, and roasting. 2 N's, 2 L's. And tell me quickly, Bryn, you and Bryn are working on a podcast, are you not?
Yeah, Bryn Griffiths and I doing a podcast for the Realtors Association of Edmonton, and it's all about real estate. And they approached me, and I said, you know what, Bryn's the guy, probably could put this together for you. So I'm the host of it, and it's been a lot of fun and really interesting. And they're really professional organization, and so we've really had some fun doing that. And yeah, so tune in. They call it RAEDO. That's Realtors Association of Edmonton, RAEDO. So that's the podcast.
I saw that you were doing I thought, oh, God damn it. Now, nobody's bought and sold more houses as a media host than
Can
me.
you? Yeah.
I would have been perfect for hosting that website or that
I beat you
podcast.
to it.
Yes, you did. MarkConnolly.ca, 2 N's, 2 L's. Say hi to Allison for me, and thanks for your help with this as we look forward to the 2026 Olympics.
All right. Thanks, Terry.
Reluctantly.
This podcast reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. Get a better rate, term, and service for your 2026 mortgage renewal. Concept Clothing and Culture. ConxEPPT.com. And Wendy Campbell, Realtor with BlackmoreRealEstate.ca. Also a Realtor partner with Rowett New Home Builders.
Reluctantly.